it made me feel not good about myself, you know, even though I didn't do anything. It's just that I felt like I was a bad person because I was in jail.
Marcella Dake spent a combined 7 months in jail before the Bail Project paid to have her released, and the possession and assault charges she was facing were ultimately dropped.
Are you innocent until proven guilty? But they treat you like a prisoner, you know, and they shouldn't.
Dake's story is a common one, spending weeks, months, or years in jail waiting on a court date because you can't afford to bail yourself out. But over the last several years, bail reform has picked up steam across the country. Courts in New York, Washington, D.C., and Illinois have all experimented with reforms, sometimes controversial, that have allowed more defendants to go free while awaiting trial. The reforms have been fiercely debated, with opponents claiming they increase crime.
Bail reform has to be changed. It's ridiculous.
And advocates saying it finally takes an unjust burden off the poor and helps prevent pushing people into a tailspin of lost jobs and broken families.
All Illinoisans will live in a safer and more just state with this law on the books.
Here in Harris County, the largest county in the state of Texas, a federal lawsuit forced the county to take on misdemeanor bail reform in 2017. And while the reform was and still is controversial, a new study claims it not only decreased pretrial jail time, but also increased public safety across the county.
In no cases is there any evidence that crime goes up.
Paul Heaton from the University of Pennsylvania was the lead author on the study. A federal judge required county judges to release any individuals charged with misdemeanors who would ordinarily qualify for bail. Heaton focused on those newly released individuals in the study.
So what would you expect to see in the data if it were true that releasing people leads to more crime? We should see higher future contact, right? More charges, more felonies being filed against those folks. And, when you look at the data, it's pretty clear that that's not true. That doesn't happen at all.
In the first 6 months following this change, there were 1,500 more people released under the reforms. Following them for 3 years, Heaton found a 6% decrease in prosecutions compared to what would be expected based on past trends. Not only that, but things like guilty pleas and time served also dropped.
We completely agree with the fact that you shouldn't be in jail just because you're poor on misdemeanor charges. Now, felony charges are a different animal.
Doug Griffith is the president of the Houston Police Union, and he's been an outspoken opponent of bail reform. Griffith points to the substantial rise in homicides in Houston and across the country over the past 2 years. Houston's homicide rate jumped by 42% and 17% in 2020 and 2021, respectively. Nationwide, the FBI reported a 30% rise in homicides in 2020.
As the bond reform for the misdemeanors went about, it kind of transitioned and got sucked into the felony bond system, which was not the intent. It's been a disastrous program that's been shoved into Harris County that has cost lives.
Griffith claims judges in Harris County have been too lenient on repeat offenders, particularly those charged with violent felonies.
Misdemeanor bail has worked. Now, if you would ask, has some judge made a mistake? Or if they had a chance to push the reset button, would they do something different? I'm sure that is the case.
Commissioner Rodney Ellis was one of the first public officials in the county to throw his support behind bail reform. And while the reform he supported specifically targeted misdemeanor offenders, he says some of the same principles apply for felony cases.
If you believe equal protection under the law, if you and I have the same profile, whether we are accused of a misdemeanor or a felony, the same standard ought to apply to both of us.
Ellis says the rise in homicides in Houston has nothing to do with bail.
I think the big issue is a proliferation of easy access to guns. We spend more time banning books in schools than banning guns. They get into the schools.
For Marcella Dake, who lost her job and 7 months of her freedom because she couldn't afford bail, she's still putting the pieces back together.
It took my time away, from me pursuing to do better for myself. It put a stop on my life, put a hold on my life.
Now, Chance, the next big shoe to drop in this space is an Illinois statewide ban on cash bail, the first of its country. That is set to take effect in January of 2023.
Jamal, it's good to get some hard numbers because, again, you hear studies like this, and then you see coverage from, like, the New York Post where they say this guy who's running through the street with an axe has been arrested 48 times and why he's out, and all this. So to actually get some numbers is helpful. Could it be this? The way that they defined this, they said crime stats like prosecutions fell since reform. Is it possible the entire system softened in a way that they're more lax? People know no one's going to be arrested, so they don't call police. There are fewer arrests. There are fewer prosecutions.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, Paul Heaton, the person who conducted this study, had a lot of data to work with, and he says that he's confident that he controlled for those other factors. But the one thing that could really play a role, if we're specifically talking about prosecutions, is the idea of significant delays in the court system. According to the Justice Administration Department of Harris County, the average length of time it takes for a case to go from beginning to some type of resolution went from 176 days in 2016 to 492 days in 2021. So a huge jump there. And to be clear, a lot of these problems are not necessarily the fault of Harris County. You go in 2017 where they have Hurricane Harvey, and the main criminal court building in Houston, Texas, was completely flooded out. No one could work there for years at a time. It's actually still being renovated right now. And you have the pandemic, which took the entire legal process online and caused significant delays for that county and many others across the country. So, again, delays in that court system is not something that's just affecting Houston. It's going across all of these big cities across the country.
Jamal Andrus, live tonight in Texas. Thank you.